Tony Evans, Kingdom Man. Who knows who Tony Evans is? Raise your hand.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's a pastor down in Texas. He's been the chaplain for the Dallas Cowboys and the, what's the basketball team in Dallas? Mavericks. There you go, Mavericks. But Jim, you want to say something about what we viewed on Monday night?
Yes, so it was called Kingdom Men. I actually didn't know that much about it before we got there. Jim invited us to go. But it was basically just Tony Evans, men, you know, in informal settings, like the barbershop or whatever, talking about what it means to have a mentor, discipling, you know, living life together with a younger man, and the impact that it has on their life for the future, and it's the truth, you know.
And guys, I keep, you know, harping on this, that everybody needs a Timothy. You know, everybody needs somebody that they can speak life into, and everybody needs somebody who can speak life into them. Now, I know there's some people here that Pastor Mike is speaking life into, right? One of them sitting right next to you. The other one is Randy. But really, guys, the question is, how do we want to be remembered? You know, we want to be remembered by trying to fulfill the Great Commission, right? And by training those that have less knowledge than we do about how to go and fulfill the Great Commission. So we have tried to do mentorship here before, and it hasn't really taken off. But I'm going to be talking about this, you know, seriously, because we'd like the men in this church to get closer, to be more cohesive, and to be kingdom men. And the only way we're going to do this is change this country one man at a time. So I just wanted to lay that out for you here today. But today I'm happy to have my friend Peter D'Olimpio giving his testimony. I've known Peter for, what, about 15 years?
Something like that,
yeah. So Peter and I have been together through thick and thin, and he's
More thick than fat.
he's been a supporter of mine for my Guatemala trips, and today he's going to give his testimony. So I'm just going to turn it over to Peter.
Excellent. All right.
You guys probably, that screen doesn't swivel anymore.
Yeah.
It just sits there, right?
I'm sorry, Jim.
That's okay.
We'll go like that.
All right, morning, guys. First, I want to thank Jim and the Church Men's Ministry for having me here. This just means more. You guys will have to know. This is my second time doing this, so I'm kind of getting the bugs out of the process. But it really means a lot to me. I really, really want to thank you guys. As Jim stated before, this presentation today is going to be my testimony on how God healed me from numerous childhood traumas, two of them being the premature death of my dad when I was 15, and some subsequent sexual abuse the same year. Today's presentation, I'm going to do a couple things. I'm going to start off with just 2 seconds about me. I'm going to give you 2 seconds of facts and figures, and then I'm going to go into my testimony. It's going to be in 3 phases. I'm going to start with what life was like before I met God. I'll go into how and where I met God, and from there it's going to be what life has been like since I met God. The super shortened version is, I have the life Jesus died for you now. So, a little bit about me. I'm 62 years old, been married 37 years to the same woman. You have to use specific tonight. Please pray for her, she's stuck with me. 3 children, 33 and 30-year-old daughters, 24-year-old son. My youngest 2 were foster kids that we adopted as older children. And as a side note, if you or anyone you know ever wants to do foster, adoptive care, whatever, come see me. I'd love to tell you about it. I'll tell you what works. I'll tell you what doesn't work. It's been a heck of a ride. Just became a grandfather, 5-month-old boy, another one on the way. Yeah, love grandchildren. Way more fun than my kids. Should have had them first. So let's get you grounded and all that. Okay, so there is a little handout on your table. If you would pass those around, please. I do hope I have enough. I've run 30. There might be some extra on the table. We'll pass them to the back. We'll go off here. And we'll all have one. Okay, just about 10 seconds of facts and figures about sexual abuse of boys. According to a CDC study in 2005, the most comprehensive ever on that subject, 1 out of 6 men suffer from some form of childhood sexual abuse. That's 24 million men, okay? And the study also proved that that is way underreported, okay? This is beyond an epidemic, okay? Think about this, if you're watching the Super Bowl or a ball game and there's 100,000 guys sitting in the stadium, that's over 16,000 victims with my problem, okay? A little more perspective, more men suffer from childhood sexual abuse than prostate cancer. And look where we spend the money. Okay? A child is 9 times more likely to be abused if they are in either a single parent or a very troubled home, of which I had 2 strikes against me. And of all the children born this year, 500,000 will be abused by the age of 17. Beyond an epidemic, ruining the country. I don't have to go on with that, but I think you guys get the idea. Okay? Men who have such abuse and trauma in their past are at way more serious risk for things like PTSD and depression. I can tell you PTSD and depression is not a character flaw. It is not weakness. It is a legitimate condition that can be managed, and you can live with it and get your life back, but it is a legitimate condition. This type of trauma is the root cause of most of the addictions we see in this country. And if you think about what you hear in the news, contrary to popular belief, we may not get the full story in the news. But they do cover the addictions and the behaviors that go with it, and you guys know that the behaviors that go with all of that are ruining this country. Root cause, right here. Suicidal thoughts, attempts, the people that just, their lives are falling apart, problems with relationships, and on and on and on. Huge, huge issue, guys. Huge, huge issue. So let me get into a little bit about what life was like before God healed me. I'm an only child. My dad was a World War II vet, Italian-American background. All 4 of my grandparents came over. Mom was a homemaker, pretty typical of what you saw in the 60s and 70s. My maternal grandmother had some very serious undiagnosed mental illnesses, and if anybody over 50 would think back in the day what mental illness meant. God forbid you were crazy. She never got any help, but there wasn't any help back in the day anyway, so pretty much stuck. When I was 13, my grandmother moved into us. We lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment. We always lived in 2-family houses owned by family members. That's kind of what Italians did, upper and lower thing. She moved in, and I wound up sharing my bedroom with my grandmother, which I did willingly from the time I was born until I was 5. I lived with her because Dad was out of work. That's what family does. So she needed us, she came in, she lived with us, and her behaviors literally ripped the family apart. My mother tried to keep my grandmother happy, which she never did. My father basically checked out, and I kind of got kicked to the curb. In April of 1972, I was 15, my grandmother died, and 6 weeks later, almost to the day, my father was 49, dropped dead of a heart attack. Interesting side story, which I didn't think about. His last words to me were at the supper table that night. He was yelling at me to get a haircut. Anybody over, growing up in the 60s, if your hair touched your ears, you were a hippie and you were a disgrace to the family and all of that crisis, which is like stupid by today's standards. But he yelled at me that I was going to get that GD haircut, and 3 hours later, he's dead. Just like that. So, lesson learned. Be very careful what you tell your boys. Might be the last thing to remember. So between those 2 tragedies, I was always a hustler. I always had a buck in my pocket, paper routes and shoveling snow or whatever. I had a paper route at the time, and I met a 28-year-old man who was a customer on my paper route who befriended me and wound up sexually abusing me and a classmate at his home. I can tell you it was the classic grooming that predators do. They do have a method to their madness. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But I was the prime candidate. I had the absent father. You can say what you want about fatherlessness, but it does contribute to problems, believe me. No father, mother consumed elsewhere. sad, ignored, depressed, you name it. Totally forgotten. That's me, 17. Who had the sideburns back in the day? Come on, fess up. All right, who had them? Come on, I know somebody did. You know, to look at that kid, I hid everything pretty good. I had everything. I played football for Zavarian High School in Westwood. I had money, girlfriends, good grades, I mean, the whole 9 yards. But that's what you saw on the outside. I keep thinking back to a Bible verse, and I forget the exact number of it, where it talks about a whitewashed tomb full of dead men's bones. Look great on the outside. Inside, nothing but dry, rotted, dust, dead boy bones. So, when Dad passed away, I immediately went into survival mode. Like, you know, how am I going to survive? How am I going to take care of my mother? She didn't work. We didn't have much money. So I was like, how am I going to survive? How am I going to care for my mother? I thought I deserved all of my things that happened, the abuse, my dad dying. I thought God was trying to punish me for something, which I couldn't figure out what. I thought everything was my fault. The intense pain, the embarrassment, the guilt and everything was just absolutely crippling to a guy. I thought that I was a willing participant, which I was not. It is never the child's fault, but I didn't think I had the right to say no. I lost control of my mind and my body. I literally had an out-of-body experience, which is very common to children going through trauma. And I thought I was permanently damaged goods. And that thinking, permanently damaged goods, and all my fault and less of a man, would cloud my thinking for decades afterwards. Interesting thing about the whole less than a man thing, once I became a parent and had a son, and I saw what a 15-year-old kid really is, just a kid, it kind of dawned on me that at 15 years old, I wasn't a man, but I was less than a man. But how can I be less than something I wasn't in the first place? So the light bulb starts to go off when you have your own kids. During that same time, in the early 70s, I had a lot of extended family die. Big Italian family, we were going to wakes and funerals at least once a year of a close family member. I thought it was normal that everybody died around and you always went to funerals. I couldn't get over these kids at school who had never been to a funeral in high school. The super shortened version here is that I fell for every lie that Satan threw at me. Every single one. And all of that prevented me from getting help for decades. But back in the day, there was no help. I can tell you with certainty there's lots of help for guys today. We're finally talking about things. There is no need to suffer in silence from anything. There's help out there for just about everything you could possibly think of. Growing up, I had to prove myself. I had to be this thing called a man. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know how to define it, but by gosh, I was going to be one. Again, the football, jobs, money, girls, beer, just trying to prove I wasn't damaged goods. I mentioned I went to a Catholic high school, but I was very confused about God. God was over here, and it's like, are you there, God? And why are you doing all of this? And the Catholic Church was over here with the rules and the regulations and the things I had to do in church, stand up, sit down, whatever. And I just could not get the two of those together in my head. I was convinced God had this plan to punish me for something I did. In hindsight, it's not something I did, it was something that was done to me. I did nothing wrong. I did not cause my father's death. But again, the voices of, not good enough, damaged goods, all of that just kept playing in my head. But life went on. Married my college sweetheart at age 25. Tried to bury everything, but that didn't work. My coping strategy back in the day was to become I'll call a success junkie. I figured if I had the career and made the money and the promotions and all that, if I just had the big career, then I'd be this thing called a man, whatever that was. And it was socially acceptable. It was a way to prove things. And my career took off. I got out of school. I wound up at the Digital Equipment Corporation. Anybody work for DEC back in the day? Any Deckies? Yep, we got one. Always got one. And the career took off. The raises, the promotions, the side businesses, the more I got, the more I wanted. I figured if I just got that one more promotion, raise, bonus, award, whatever, I'd fill that hole that's in here. Now, I can tell you from experience, that don't work. That just does not work. There was some bumps along the way too. We had no trouble having my first child, but we couldn't have any more for whatever reason. The doctors couldn't point to anything and say what the problem was. They just said things wouldn't work. Of course, I knew better than the doctors. I was convinced that was my fault too. It must be something I did or deserved to make all of that happen. So our secondary infertility, I'll call it, was my fault. We tried to adopt. Our first attempt at adoption failed miserably. We took on a child who had way more problems than anybody knew about. We had to tell the state how many problems the kid had, and we literally had to send the kid back. The good news from that story is he got to get the help he needed, and he got to live in a residential home where he belonged. But of course, that was my failure too. I was a failure because, sounds so stupid now. I was a failure because I couldn't fix a permanently handicapped kid. You can see the toxic mentality here. Kept the secrets, you know. I told my wife back in the day, a couple of female cousins, that was it. They had no idea because, you know, back in the day, guys didn't have stories. They just didn't. They didn't know what to do, where to even begin. And, you know, there was no help back when I opened up, unlike today, which I'll get to shortly. So when my oldest daughter hit 2, that's when everything hit. That's when you really start looking at your own childhood and looking and seeing what happened, and that's the first time I started getting help and reaching out. So that's a little bit of background. Now I'll tell you a little bit about where and how I met God. When my oldest daughter was 2, I decided the Catholic Church wasn't for my family. I wanted a church that had the things for my children and family and all that. So I started shopping around for churches. Found a lot of good ones. As I went through the churches and joined different ones, I struggled with the why God, why, and are you really there, and why do you do all of this to me, and why'd you allow it? And then I started getting into Bible studies and church groups and things. And I started reading about David and Moses and Jeremiah and all these guys, and they've got God, and they've got power, and they've got money, and Solomon, and all these guys. And these brilliant guys, they're asking the same questions I am. Why God, why? I'm like, go figure. What is this? So finally, the first time the light bulb went off, maybe I'm not nuts over here. I got saved in the late 1990s, but I really didn't have the feeling that most people have when they get saved. I spent the next 10 years running around saying, okay, I'm saved, now what? And people just looked at me like, they've been saved for 25 years, well, of course you're saved. But, okay, now what? And nobody could answer me. Maybe I wasn't listening, I don't know. I was still very much a control freak, like I was as a kid. I felt I had to control my entire world because I couldn't trust people, and I certainly couldn't trust God because God didn't have my best interests at heart. Yet another lie, of course. In hindsight, control's a funny thing. I learned that control is an illusion. You know, we guys like to control everything. We like to be in charge, but control is an illusion. God's in control. I never lost control through any of that because I never had control. You can't lose something you never had in the first place. So another lesson from the School of Hard Knocks, yeah, God was in control. I spent 31 years at Digitals through the Compaq and Hewlett-Packard mergers, all of the corporate madness that went on, the countless layoffs, and I was fortunate enough to duck, and did 31 years. And in 2012, I took a voluntary buyout / early retirement and got the heck out of there. Took the money and ran. And that's when everything came to a head. I was terrified that I'd never get another job again for the rest of my life because I'm damaged goods and I'm not no good and all of that. My terminally ill mother came to live with us. I was broken beyond repair, absolutely broken. So the week between Christmas and New Year, 2012, I checked myself into McLean's. I was done. I was completely done. I couldn't fix me. You know, me, the self-made man, I couldn't fix me. The doctors couldn't fix me. And I was in my own private hell. And then it suddenly occurred to me that if hell is worse than this, I don't want no part of it. So, in the hospital, I decided to have a talk with God. Well, I didn't have a plan, or I didn't actually try to take my life or anything, but I really thought that the world and my family and friends would be much better off without me on this earth. Anybody see the movie It's a Wonderful Life? Okay, George Bailey up on the bridge there? Yeah, that was me. That's me. So that movie kind of hits home. It was at that moment I decided to have a yelling, screaming match with God. And I demanded God take my life because I couldn't take it anymore. And then I said, I challenged God. I said, quote, I'll temper this a little bit, God did not have the ability to take my life. And it was at that point, it's like that's it. I was completely done, and I fell apart even more. And I said, okay, God, that's it, you win. I surrendered. And in hindsight, I had to surrender the battle to win the war. Right. The most convoluted, screwed up logic I'd ever had in my life. But like, how does a real man give up to win a war? And it's okay, well, no wonder I'm in the hospital, I must be nuts. So I surrendered to God, and I made a promise. And I said, God, if you do something with all of this we got going on over here, I will do whatever you want. But, huge but, you're going to have to tell me what you want me to do with it, because I don't know anything anymore. And that was it. I felt this little tap on the back of my head, and all of a sudden I got up, and I left my room. I started hanging with the patients, and that was the first step on my road on the way back to the life I have now, and the life, like I said, that Jesus died for me to have originally. So, big lesson here, guys. Like I said, depression, PTSD, whatever you call it, it is not a weakness or a character flaw. Real men do get it. Real men can live with it. Real men can get their lives back from it. I don't know why we believe this crapola, but we do. So if you or anybody you know or cross paths with has that problem, please help and get help. It's not hopeless. It's so worth it. It's way worth it. So a little bit about my life now with God. Life did get better eventually. I got back to work after about 8 months, got back on my feet. I never, ever dreamed in my wildest imagination I would go public with a testimony. My plan was to just, get over it and move on. But again, I claim God laughs, like most of us. After the hospital, I hit it with pretty much everything I could think of, treatments and doctors and therapists and meds and family, friends, you name it. But I was trying to fix myself. People don't get fixed. Machines get fixed. People heal. It's a very different process. And we guys are fixers. We like to fix things. The kids come with the broken bikes, and we take a 5-minute project and turn it into a half an hour, and we look like the hero, and we fix things. But this can't be fixed. You have to go back in time. You have to feel every crappy emotion that's associated with the trauma, whatever it is, and then you start to heal. And you start to heal, and you move on, and it's there, but you learn to live with it. So from churches and family and friends, I got healthier mentally and spiritually, and then I decided I needed to drop 30 pounds because between the depression meds and eating like a pig from stress eating all my life, and some bad habits that we all have, especially me. I joined Weight Watchers. Figured out I was going to drop a few pounds and wound up changing my life in the process. Weight Watchers they're really slick marketers, I'll tell you. They have this new members-only social media. I got to know a lot of people around the country, and I saw a lot of trends. The number one reason why people fail at Weight Watchers is they're food addicts. Remember I talked about the addictions before. They use food to numb their pain. So they go to Weight Watchers, you take the food away, you're stuck with your pain, you don't know what to do with it, you binge, you put on more weight, and you feel even worse. So now you got this downward spiral. And I saw all these people telling their stories, these horrendous, gut-wrenching stories. And like, you know what? They can tell their story, I'm gonna tell mine. And I did on social media. That was like, it's semi-public, but it was kind of public. I put it out there. High level, how God healed me, and if I can do what you can do, and all of the pain and stuff that caused. And I would have been happy to get a couple dozen responses, but his social media literally blew up. Number one, guys don't talk about stuff like this. As I found out, guys don't talk about anything at all. I had countless women come back and say, my husband, my son, my brother, etc., had the same exact thing, and they're drinking like fishes, and they're ruining their lives, and I don't know what to do to help them. All kinds of discussion from that. There were guys who said, because Peter told his story, I'm telling mine. And they did. One guy, I know, quit drinking, he's been sober ever since. The shadow just went on, I can't even tell you. It was one of the most healing things I've ever seen, for all of us, really. As the chatter was going on, went on for about a year or so at this point, my pals come back and said, you know, you should go work with guys. You'd be really good helping guys, you know, do stuff, whatever. And my initial reaction was, get out of here. I'm not talking to guys about this. Are you kidding me? I'm not talking to guys about anything. Forget that. But God had other plans, so to make a long story short, I found the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center, and I walked in and said, hey, here I am, I'm fixed. I'd love to volunteer and help out. I'd love to take a help desk call or take a couple guys out to coffee, and you know, that was the plan. And again, I planned, God laughed. Walked in, talked to the director. She pushed a couple of buttons, and I completely fell apart in her office. Again, you know, damaged goods, loser, all of that. So she said, why don't we talk for a couple of times? So I started seeing her on a weekly basis. After the third meeting, she says, oh, everybody who walks into volunteer completely falls apart and does just what you did. I was like, really? Okay, so I'm not nuts again. Okay. So she's helping me along, and we're talking, and I'm trying to get stronger and healthy. And while all of that was going on, Weight Watchers management saw all the chatter on social media, and they contacted me. And they said that they were doing a feature on Sexual Assault Awareness Month. They were looking all over the country for a guy who would tell their story. And we can't find the guy anywhere, and we don't understand why. I kind of went off on her and said, well, let me tell you a few things. And that was a 60-minute conversation. But at the end of that, they invited me and 4 other people to be in their feature magazine for that month. So it was a year ago last month that actually hit the street. I was terrified. What am I going to tell my friends? What am I going to tell my family, my buddies at the model train store? What are people at work going to say? I had to tell my kids. I had to tell my in-laws' family. And this magazine has circulation in excess of 1 million copies a month, not counting the people who see it in waiting, see that same one copy in waiting rooms. So I went public. That's me. That's the picture from the article. It's amazing what a $2,000 suit can do to a photo. I clean up pretty good with computers. Trick photography there. But how do I say this? As tough as it was probably one of the most healing things I ever did. I was a mess for 2 months beforehand, I was a mess for some months afterwards. But if you think back to the high school boy you saw 5 minutes ago, right? The whitewashed tomb full of dead boys' bones. This guy he got his life back. This guy got his life back. The article triggered all sorts of, I'll call it stuff, that I didn't even know existed. So I fell apart, and I got help, and I picked myself back up, and I haven't been the same since. One of the things I did was go down to the cemetery last Mother's Day, and I had a little conversation with my parents. Read from the article, the the Watching website has a video interview of me also telling the story, so I'm online too. And I spent 45 minutes talking about the last 45 years. And when I was done, I buried the article at the gravesite and walked away. And just like that, free at last. Just finally free at last. And the other thing that came up was, as I went into survival mode to take care of Mom, it was a lot easier to be the dad than it was to be the kid. Because if I was a kid and I let Mom be the mom, then I had to go deal with all my stuff. So being the dad was a great way to not deal with my problems till I was ready. Eventually I became ready. But if you think back to the guy in the hospital and the promise I made to God on doing something to use all of this to change lives, that's what I did here. The social media blew up for months afterwards, and I couldn't keep up with the feedback. I saw people on social media say they were getting help, they got help. I saw them reach out to other people who were early in their journeys. I saw older people reaching out to younger people after they got help. I saw all of this help that went on from people, and I could not even keep up with the chatter. It was absolutely one of the most healing and helpful things I've ever seen in my life. It had to be God. The big lesson there, gentlemen, is when you drop a pebble in the ocean, you never know where those ripples are going to go. I still get feedback from that article. I still get people who saw it who contact me. And then from the article got out, and then certain people saw it, who showed it to people, who showed it to Jim and other people, and here I am. And the reason I do that is to pay back God from what happened in the hospital. Oh, on a lighter note, that's the front page of the article. Those are the 4 people who were with me. Tough job, but somebody had to do it. Great ladies with still friends ever since that. Amazing, just amazing people. So that's the summary of the story, and if you would take your handouts now and go to page 2, you will see something called Top 10 Truths About Abuse. I won't go through the whole thing, but there are certain key things that people need to understand about any kind of trauma. Number 1 and 2 are probably the most important. None of this was my fault. None of this was anyone's fault, especially sexual abuse of children. It is never, ever the child's fault. There are laws on the books that say that the child is not responsible, but the adult is responsible. The adult usually goes to jail when something like that happens. I don't care who you are, what you said, what you did, what you felt. It is never the child's fault. The child did nothing to deserve any of that, number 2. Number 4, the feelings associated with trauma can't hurt me unless I stuff them down. And that's when people develop addictions and all the other stuff they do to avoid the trauma of their past. And now you do that kind of stuff, now you got 2 problems. You got the original problem, and now all the legal problems and everything from the behaviors that happen. Number 6, you're only as sick as your secrets. No more secrets, no more illness. And finally, number 9, which is probably the toughest one for me. I will never, ever let the reason for my pain serve as an excuse to stay where I am for the rest of my life. And you shouldn't either. So before I close, if we could go on to page 3 on what to do here. Obviously, guys, we are in charge of our families. We are responsible for children, girls and boys. How do you prevent sexual abuse of the children in your life, and how do we as men protect our families, most important? First of all, know the facts. I gave you a ton of facts in that paragraph. I won't repeat them, but now you know what the facts are. Number 2, look for the signs. Yes, some signs are stupid teenage behaviors that most of us did. But there are certainly symptoms and signals where you see radical changes in your children, you know something's going on. Number 3, you have to educate yourself and your children, okay? Back in the day, nobody ever talked to kids about much of anything. You gotta talk to your children at the appropriate ages in appropriate ways about this problem. I can tell you from experience, they're hearing it anyway. You call some young boys together, and you start to talk about this, they'll tell you 4 or 5 boys, they know that this happened to them. And some of them are in foster homes, and some are legal problem, whatever, but they're hearing this anyway. They may as well hear the truth from us. All right, kids, boys should not have to learn out in the streets like I did about stuff like this. And you tell them that no matter what happened, or God forbid anything did happen, that it's not their fault, and you'll believe them, and you'll protect them. Some resources for if and when you need them. If you go down to other resources for men and family, item A. If you have children, boys and girls that you need to talk to, there are 3 URLs here with scripts, age-appropriate scripts on what to tell kids, how to tell them, and the whole thing. The first one's in comic book format for younger children. The other 2 are for older children, preteens, and things like that. Step-by-step script on exactly what you need to tell them. No thought. Okay. Item B, probably one of the more important ones. 1in6.org is a website for men. There's 24-hour hotline there with trained counselors who can help you, direct you to resources in your area. It's a ton of information that you can't stop every question. And the other one is rain.org, that's for any survivor. A local resource is the Boston Area Rape Crisis Center. There is a fantastic article on their website, how to support a survivor in your life if you have one and you don't know what to do, or God forbid your child is abused. bark.org/help-someone will tell you step by step exactly what you need to do and what you need to think of and who you need to pull in. Item D, the grooming behaviors I talked about before. If your child in your life if you see something you're not sure, it's like that just doesn't feel right for whatever reason, that link there tells you exactly how these predators think, how they operate. It could tip you off to something could potentially be going on, or might be underway, God forbid. But that will tell you exactly how they think and how they operate. Item E, Oprah did a fantastic documentary called 200 Men. She basically calls up 200 men and talks for an hour with the guys and professionals, and it's probably one of the best documentaries I've ever seen. And lastly, item F is the last page on your flyer. Okay, that's the actual story that made the Weight Watchers everything. So take a look at that. So in closing, I guess I had to go through all of this stuff to be the person that God wanted me to be. I can tell you that the true test of manhood is not, drinking beer and chasing girls and working your butt off for a big company and making money. One of those 2 tests is to really face your past and resolve it and get your life back, and that is true healing. I've proven that one. I'm an example of about taking something the devil meant for bad and using it for good. Like the last chapter of Job, God gave him back the years of the locust ate. I got back the years of the locust ate, and God did it for me. And by God, He can do it for you. You just gotta let Him. Don't be a stubborn juice like me, like I was. And above all, guys, I want you to know there is so much help out there now. We're finally starting to talk about things. If you or anybody you know or crosses your path needs to reach out for help, get the help you need. It's getting the help, and healing is a lot less painful than burying it in all of the crap that goes along with it. So recovery is absolutely possible, and I can prove it. So just in closing, the other reason I do it is a little quote from Jimmy Carter about my faith demands. I do whatever I can do, wherever I am, wherever I can, for as long as I can, with whatever I have, to try to make a difference. And I never forgot that one. And finally, final stage of healing is using what happens to you to help other people. That's where I am. Okay, that's it for me, gentlemen. I just thank you for your time, and I'll open up for questions.
So Peter, what are you doing for work now? Is this full-time for you, or?
No, no, I work full-time. I work for Millipore Sigma. It's a life science company.
So you
in
did go
Burlington.
back and find a,
I went back and I found a job making almost 20% more money and half the effort and half the stress. Okay? So God opened the door. This job we had was further contributed to my stress. After I got out of the hospital, it's like, okay, so I stayed home and Mom died in July and I found a job in August. I started in September. Just like that. So, yeah, God had a plan.
So Peter, if we look at the statistics that you gave us.
Yep.
The men in this room, there's probably 3 or 4.
5.
3 or 4, based on the amount of men
Yep.
here. Based on statistically speaking, that probably have suffered abuse.
Right.
So my question is, do you know, is there any difference between people that are in the church and people in general society? Meaning that we know that other problems, societal problems, are probably just as prevalent in the church. For example, pornography.
Yeah.
You know, as they are for the general population.
Right.
Are there any statistics about, you know, what has happened to men in the church, or do we not know anything like that?
I haven't seen anything that's, you know, takes a survey of like just church people versus general society. I don't think that they've come that far yet.
Okay. I
But
just
I mean,
wondered.
people come from society, so I would imagine it would be roughly the same. Yeah, and I mean, and to that point, if you think about the 1 in 6, I don't think we talk about it enough in churches. I think the pastors are part of that 1 in 6, and they don't want to deal with their past either. So, it could be anything. I mean, it could be, you know, people who come here to hide and put up the facade that everything's fine and it's not. It could be people who are just hurting that don't want to deal with anybody. Could be everything in between.
What I was really thinking is, we saw that picture of you as your high school picture, and what a great looking guy, you know, Peter. So I'm asking all of us, superimpose your picture up there and ask yourself, do I look great on the outside, but on the inside, there's some turmoil. There's some things that I need to solve. You know, because all of us have things in our lives that affect us. You know, I was not subject to abuse as a boy. However, even though I had a father, I was basically fatherless because my dad was never around. He was never there for me. And my dad didn't tell me that he loved me until I was 25 years old. That's why I tell my son every day that I love him.
Yep.
Because I never heard that from my dad.
Yep.
So, in your heart of hearts, you guys can look inwardly and say, what am I struggling with and why am I struggling? And as Pastor Gary says, you know, we want to be an AT&T church. Authentic, transparent, and transformational. And I could add another T to that too. Truthful.
Yeah.
Truthful. Be truthful with yourself, that you're not hiding those things deep within. And Peter, you're going to stick around if anybody's
Yeah,
got
oh, yeah,
questions
absolutely.
afterwards
Yeah.
in private?
Yep, love to chat. Everybody will be around for a while. And just to follow on with what you said, you know, my earlier point here, the whitewashed tomb full of dead boy bones. Anybody sitting here thinking, oh my God, if they only knew fill in the blank about me, they'd throw me out of the church. Probably not, because it's probably a room full of people with your exact same problem, okay? Thinking the same thing. And I know with guys, everyone sits around saying, somebody's gonna say something to make this safe, I'm never gonna be first. Well, it's time. You know, if you've got the Spirit of God within you, and you've got that strength and that power, you say something, you have no idea how many guys are gonna follow you. So it's like, all right, say something already. It's okay to say something.
I mean, we've already had guys that got up here and were very authentic with Randy and Bill and talked about their time being incarcerated. So, I mean, we have people that are stepping up and saying, I'm not perfect. You know, I've got problems and I admit it. And only God can help me. And just remember, only God can help you.
Yep.
So,
And take down the mask, gentlemen, it feels great. You'll never regret it. Yes, sir?
Yes, I'm sorry I was a little late. but
Okay.
I have something to talk about personal transformation. Because we all come from society, we're in church, right? We all come from society, we have different issues affecting us. And we come into church. One thing a pastor talked to me about, which really touched my life, was that I come from a country where HIV and AIDS was a real pandemic. So he told us that the church has a cure for it. And people were wondering. And he said, the church has a cure because the church preaches abstinence. And that if everybody who was going to church would abstain, all the people who have AIDS would die, and, you know, it will not continue to propagate. So he was appealing on us to leave what the church preaches about HIV and AIDS. Because if we live it and we practice it and we stay with our relationships with our wives, then HIV would naturally just die.
Yeah.
So that depends on how we. But then we had people in church who were dying every day, but every day they're in church, and they were dying of HIV, which means that personal transformation wasn't there. So the challenge is for us to be personally transformed, and we transform society. We can come from society, we think that the church, we can come from society with all those issues, and then we bring them into church. But if we come to church and we are transformed by the church, we can go back to transform our society. I think that's the trend. So we come here to receive transformation, then we can take it back to our communities and see how we can, continue the process of encouraging people to live the kind of lives we should live as a genuine Christian church.
Excellent. Thanks, brother. Other questions, comments, observations, anything?
I just want to say thank you for your transparency, number one. Number two, you said something very poignant that's been sticking with you the last few minutes. That you said you got to, give up a battle to win a war. And that's been my story the last couple of months, and I decided to give up my battle so I can win my war. So thank you for that. And just, I got some transgressions, some iniquities in my life that not too many people know about, that I'm not ready to put out there. But just thank you for, your bravery and your transparency, and just, allowing the Holy Spirit to come up here and just, pour yourself out to us. That's
You're welcome,
very
brother.
powerful.
I give you a lot of credit for working your stuff, and we all have it, by the way.
Yeah.
All right, we don't talk about it, we're manly men, and we manly men don't do that, but we all have those, so you're in good company. Just know that. Other questions? Somebody asked me if I ever regretted going public. I regret not doing it all sooner, but I wasn't ready. Society wasn't ready. One of the, maybe the only good thing that ever came out of some of the scandals with Penn State and Catholic Church and whatever is that the problem is so bad we can't hide from it, and we're finally talking about it. And we finally understand that that's the root cause of some of the stuff ripping this country apart. And, until we stand up and say enough, we're gonna continue. Yes?
So just one more question. Are you still with the Catholic Church right now?
No, I go to the Christian Life Center downtown Leominster. Left the Catholic Church formally probably 30 plus years ago. Yeah, there was no one bad thing about the church. It was just the scripture and the message and the services just didn't work for me. I didn't know what did at the time. Like, I went on and shopped around in different churches and things, but it just wasn't for me. So I don't have anything necessarily bad that happened to me there, but don't necessarily have anything like good either that built me up. Other questions?
Peter, that $2,000 suit you were wearing,
Yeah.
was that from Weight Watchers?
They loaned it to me.
Oh, they didn't give it to you?
No, they gave me,
Oh,
they gave me the shirt. They gave me I have a blue shirt that I almost wore today. I tried to get the suit, but apparently that belonged to somebody named Christian Dior. In fact, in the article, they mentioned like where they got all the clothes from the different men, and that was the DOC. And they go through who gave you the belt and the shoes and all of that. But they gave me the shirt, but they wouldn't part with anything else. Someday I'm gonna buy that suit someday. Actually, I think if you added up all the clothes, it was about $1,800. So I had to give them all my measurements beforehand, and then we had to play dress up for about an hour and a half with different suits, and all these Weight Watcher people throwing themselves at me.
So-
Oh, I love the gray one, I love the blue
So
one.
you and your wife were 2 days in New York City for this
I went
photo
along.
shoot?
I went along.
Oh, you went along? Oh, okay.
Yep, she said, go along, go meet your Weight Watcher pals and have a ball.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. I mean, you know, obviously, over 1 million people getting this magazine. You're out there, man. You're out there.
People have
So,
said that I've been out there, yes. People have called me out there for quite some time, yes.
okay, well, listen, those of you that have children, I just want you to know that Peter and his friends that are here with him today are model railroaders. And Peter loves to have people over to his house because his whole basement is filled with a model railroad. So if you talk to him afterwards and set up a time or get his phone number, you can take your children over there and he'll show you his model railroad. And he's got a new setup since Jacob and I have been there, so
Brand
we're
new
gonna make
setup.
a time to go over there and see it because it is fascinating. So, and I guess the other two guys here, you guys would probably welcome, and you'll let us know when your shows are. You got a railroading show coming up in somewhere?
Yeah, definitely, there's various ones.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
That's my basement. The little editorial commercial there.
So, yeah, it's fascinating. It's fascinating, and I've got to tell you, kids love it. Kids love it. I think Jacob's 18 now. I think the first time we went over there, he was like 12.
Yeah.
And he was talking about it for a year
Right.
afterwards.
Yeah, he wouldn't go home. He just would not leave, and that's typical what happens. Usually the little kids especially have to leave the house over the dad's shoulder kicking and screaming. So anybody wants to come over the house, love to have you over. I'm also a director of the Nashua Valley Model Railroad Association in Shirley. We've got about 3,000 square feet in our clubhouse, 4-level trains. If you guys ever want a private tour, let me know. Be a great men's activity.
So, guys, next month, well, wait a minute. When is our men's breakfast next month?
First.
The what?
First Saturday every month.
Oh, okay, you guys are learning that. Guess what else we have going on here? Right in the same room, there's no breakfast involved, but the third Saturday of every month at 8:30, so you get to sleep in,
Nice.
is prayer. And I want to just tell you, Chad has seen the video. I don't think anybody else has, but Pastor Gary and I are going to try and institute church-wide this program called Pray and Go, and we may call it something different. But Pray and Go, basically, what's involved is that we want to pray for every house within a 10-mile radius of this church. So we will assign neighborhoods to people. Let's say that, Lewis, let's take you for example, in your neighborhood, we might give you 3 or 4 blocks in your neighborhood, and your job, along with someone else, a prayer partner, is to walk down those streets and pray for every house in your neighborhood. And we don't want to be like the Jehovah's Witnesses, the door knockers, as my son calls them, but we might put something on the door, not knock on the door, but just a door hanger. It says, "We prayed for you today. Please come join us at City United Church." Okay? So that the idea is we really want to be a praying church. We want to pray for the people in our community, and we hope that if they know that we're praying for them, that they'll come. All right? So be looking forward to that in the future, but 2 weeks from today, 8:30, right here, prayer. Also, next month, I had a pastor from XL Church, associate pastor, call me and ask if he could come and speak to us, and I said, sure. And he has written a book, because he spent some time in prison. It's called Twice Convicted. So it's a story about, very much, I guess, like Bill and Randy, but he's written a book about it.
Is it Pastor Emmy?
Pardon me?
Is it Pastor Emmy?
No, it's not Pastor Emmy, it's associate pastor. And forgive me, I can't remember his name. But anyway, he'll be here next month for a men's breakfast. Okay? Peter, thank you very much. George, what help do you need cleaning up here?